So this is our second core publisher training, and this week we will be talking about site structure basics. Last week we covered creating users, people pages, your header, and your partner logo footer. This week we're going to talk a bit about just the general structure of your site, the other pieces of content that you will be creating. On our agenda for this week's call, we're going to cover adding content in Core Publisher, creating and managing people pages, creating and managing program pages. And then we're going to finish off by talking about your navigation and the second part of your footer, which is your auxiliary links footer. Just as a reminder, again, you want to make sure that you are logged into your Core Publisher site and that you have those Training 2 resources saved on your computer before we get started with our first module. We're going to talk in this module just about the Core Publisher content types that you'll have access to. So there are 7 main content types that you will be creating in Core Publisher, and we're going to talk about each of these as we go throughout our next weeks of training. The first is a music live event or a live event. So a live event is a way to present concerts or NPR music content in an iframe on your site. So we have an amazing NPR music team, and they go to different concerts, they go to South by Southwest, they go to different music festivals, and they record or they videotape concert material that they can then share through the NPR Story API with our station sites, and you can pull it onto your site via a music live event. The next content type is a page. We talked about pages last week. These are just the static content pages on your site. Next up is person or people page. We're going to talk about these this week. They're just a bio page for your contributors. And then also program pages we're going to cover this week, which pull in information from Composer 2. You also have your post pages. Those are the main news articles of your site. You also have topic pages. So a topic page allows you to create an aggregation page based on tags. And then the last piece of content is a web clip that just allows you to share content from non-core publisher or NPR sources. So if you wanted to share something from a local newspaper or blog, you could do so through a web clip. And any of those pieces of content, if you want to create them, you're going to click on the Add Content link up in your top gray and black admin bar. It's to the far left. That's where you're going to be clicking to create any of the content types that we just talked about. So that's Module 1. In this module, we just review the different content types that you can create. Both editor and station admin level users will have access to create all of these content types. So you don't need to be specifically a station admin user to create them. And also remember that that add content link is accessible both through Configure Core Publisher, that dashboard, and then also there's just an add content link in your gray and black admin bar. All right. So moving on to our second module, we're going to talk about people pages now. So now we're actually going to move into creating a content type in Core Publisher. The first thing I just wanted to note is that people are different from users. So last week we created our users. They were just basically like a username and a password and an email address that allows your station staff to log into Core Publisher. But what we're talking about here are your people pages, and they are more of like a bio page that includes, their photo, their bio, their contact information. So let's take a look at an example of a people page in one of our live Core Publisher sites. So we are on YellowstonePublicRadio.org, and what we're looking at here is one of their people pages for one of their blues programmers. You see you have their name, you have their title or their capacity, their image, and then you also have a bio about them. And, for this specific people page, they've got a bit of a longer bio, but you can just have a few sentences, just something to give your web visitors an idea of who the person is. And then you'll always have this ways to connect section, and you can put the person's email address, their their blog URL, their Twitter, their Facebook, whatever that person is comfortable with sharing. So this is what you're going to see for the most basic people pages. If the person that you are creating a page for, here's another example from Yellowstone Public Radio. If they are someone who creates content, so they create posts. Kay Erickson, for example, is a news anchor. So you'll see that under her bio, there's also a river of all the posts that she has written on this core publisher site. So these people pages serve more as bios. For example, if one of your web visitors comes to your site, they just listened to Kay Erickson on the radio and they wanted to see some of the content that she had created, they'd go to her people page, get her contact info, and also information about different posts that she has created on the site. All right, let's go back into our slides and take a look at more information about people pages. So when you're thinking about who you need to create a person page for on your core publisher site, you want to definitely create them for your staff members, your reporters and news contributors, your show hosts, any volunteers, editors. Some stations even create people pages for their interns, and then also in some cases your board of directors, all of your local station staff. But you will not need to create people pages for your NPR show host and other syndicated hosts. So Steve Inskeep, Ari Shapiro, you don't need to create people pages for them. You just need to create them for your local staff. Any of those syndicated people pages are going to be brought in automatically through the NPR Story API, so you don't have to worry about those. And a person is a piece of content, so you will be going to add content in that top gray and black admin bar to create your people pages. And that brings us to our very first exercise. So this is our first exercise of training. We are going to be creating a people page. As I just mentioned, one of your homework assignments is going to be to create people pages in Core Publisher for your local staff and contributors. So let's create one now, just a test one on our site. We're going to be getting some information about our person from our resources folder. We're going to work off of the user that we created last week. So we're going to use the same name. We've got an email address, and the title of the person that we're creating is Special Interests Reporter. So I'm going to give everyone a second to make sure you're logged into your site, make sure that you have all the training resources ready. One of the first things that I'm going to do from our training resources folder is there is a file called text for people page. I'm going to ask everyone to open that and just copy that text. Just select it all and hit copy. We're going to be pasting that into our person in one moment. All right, so once you logged in, just as usual, you are on that Configure Core Publisher dashboard, and we're going to click on Add Content up in your top gray and black admin bar. And let's all now select Person. That's the type of content that we are creating. So the first thing that you're asked for is the name for our hypothetical person. We're just going to put in April O'Neil, and then we have the bio, which we're just going to paste in from that text document. And you see you have space to put bold, italics, bulleted list. You can even add hyperlinks here if you wanted to link to something. But for this example, we're just going to use plain text. And then when we scroll further down, you see that we have the ways to connect section. So this is where you're going to put the information that's going to show up here to the far right of the bio. And there is a specific format that these links need to be in. So definitely keep an eye out for this. So let's say, for example, I wanted to add April's email address. And I wanted to say email or email April, for example. So I'm going to type in what I want to show up on the page, and then I'm going to hit the pipe key. So the pipe key is that vertical line that shows up. It's a key that is between delete and enter, I believe, on most keyboards. I know it is on mine, between delete and enter. So you're going to click on that to create the pipe, and then you're going to put in the full URL of the page that you want to link to. So for email, it's always mail to colon email address. So in this example, the email address april@wtst.org. So if when you're creating this for, your local news reporters, you're going to put email, the pipe, mail to, colon, email address. Same format you're going to always use for email. If you forget to put the mail to colon in, it's not going to work. Let's say that for this example, we also have April's Twitter account. So we're going to put Twitter. Again, we're going to put the pipe, and then we're going to put in the full URL of the Twitter page. So twitter.com/AONeal. And you're going to do this for if you've got a blog, if they have a Facebook page, if you want to link to any other sorts of pages, it's always going to be Facebook, and then always the pipe to break it up, and then the full URL of the page that you are linking to. All right. So once you've added whichever ways to connect you're going to be adding to your people page, you want to then go to job title. So now this is where we're putting in the title of the person that you are creating this page for. So in this example, our staff member, April, their title is Special Interests Reporter. So we're going to type that in. If this was your membership director or your volunteer coordinator, this is where you would put that information. And then you're going to select a capacity for the person. So we recognize that in public radio, people wear many different hats. So for example, the person you're creating a page for may be a host and also staff. They may also be an author, or they may even be on your board of directors. So you're going to select however many capacities you need for that person. We're then going to upload a profile photo for them. There is a profile photo in that Dropbox folder that we downloaded to our computers. So mine is located on my desktop. And it is called Image for People page. For this one, we've just used a generic image. You're going to want to actually take a photograph of the person whose page you're creating. We do recommend, if you're going to do landscape, to do all landscape, or portrait, to do all portrait. This is also a great opportunity for you to retake staff photos if you haven't done it in a while. So we have a question really quick about the different roles. Let me scroll back up to the top under capacity. And the question is, does author mean someone who creates content on the website? And yes, it does. That is exactly what the author means, that it's someone who is writing content for your website. We have another question. Do any of those checkboxes under capacity affect how the person's page will look? They do not. No, the capacities do not affect the layout of the page. So once you have uploaded your, we have another question about photos. I want to answer this one really quickly. Do you recommend particular specs for the photo? Good question. We don't have particular specs per se, but like I said, we do recommend being consistent with the ratio that you choose to use, like 4:3 or square, portrait, landscape. You want to be consistent. We do recommend using high def images. If you do use larger photos, Core Publisher is going to always resize them down to the size that's going to fit with the template of the people page. So don't worry about using really large images. Actually, the larger and the higher definition, the better. So scrolling down, we have this other contact information. You can leave this blank. This is just a relic of our old theme, so you can leave that one blank. And then lastly, we have admin tools, and there's one drop down called Drupal user. When you click on this, it's going to give you a listing of all of the users that currently exist on your site. As of this week, all of your users should be in. So you want to select the user that corresponds to the person's page that you are creating. So in terms of workflow, you want to make sure that before you start to work on your people pages, that you have all of your users created first so that you can connect your users to your people pages. The last thing you'll want to do is make sure that the publish checkbox is checked, and then you're going to click on Save Person to save the person that you've created. We're going to give that 1 second for that page to load, and now we have our people page. You see that we've got our bio, our image, and we've got our ways to connect. When I hover over them, it's going to give me the URL that way to connect is linking to. All right, let's see if we have any questions about creating people pages. Looks like we don't have any other questions right now. All right, so when you've got your people pages, you may occasionally need to edit them for some reason. Remember that with any piece of content in Core Publisher, when you're logged in, you're going to see View and Edit tabs for each for each piece of content. If you ever need to edit a page or a person or any piece of content, you're going to just click on Edit to edit piece of content. So that brings us to our second exercise. We're going to actually edit the person page that we just created. Occasionally you may need to update them. In this example, let's change our person's job title. Maybe they went from special interest reporter to they got a promotion. They are now the local morning edition host. So let's actually go back to our site. And in this exercise, we are going to make that change to our people page. So I'm back on my site. I still have my page, my people page for April O'Neil open. So I'm just going to click on edit. And I'm going to scroll down to the job title field, and we're just going to make one change. We're just going to say local morning edition host, comma, special interest reporter. And then we're going to to save our change, we're just going to hit save person one more time. And that's going to make the change to our people page. So hopefully you all were able to follow along with that. That's just the simple way that we're going to go about making any edits to our people pages. There may also come a time that you'll need to delete a people page. Maybe that person no longer works at your station. You need to remove their people page from your site. If you're deleting a people page for someone at your staff that never created any content, maybe it's for your general manager or for your volunteer coordinator, they've never created any posts on your site, you can just go down when you edit the page and click on delete, and you will be allowed to delete that person. However, if you ever need to delete a person page for one of your show hosts or your news staff who have been creating posts on your site, you will not be able to delete them because their person page is tied directly to the posts that they create. That's how that works in Core Publisher. When a person logs into Core Publisher and they start to create posts, their people page becomes tied to those posts. And so what you'll want to do is you'll just unpublish them. So you just uncheck the publish checkbox and then hit save person. It'll remove their people page from your site, but it will keep the content intact with the byline still as their name. All right. One more thing I wanted to show really quickly before we do our recap on people pages is where all those people pages show up. Like, where do they live on your site? So when you're looking at your Core Publisher site, there's always going to be a page called Your Website URL/people. So WTST.org/people. Right now it's yourcallletters.drupal.publicbroadcasting.net/people. And when you go there, right now yours will be blank. You will probably have that April O'Neil page from our exercise, but you won't have any other people. But once you start to build out your page and you have some folks that are pulled in from the NPR Story API, this is where you're going to see all of your people pages. And again, you have a few tabs here. You'll notice that these are aligned with the different capacities that you can create, those different checkboxes you can align your people to. The All tab is going to be all people, local people, syndicated people. They're all going to show up here. But if you were to click on staff, for example, then you'll see only the folks who you have checked the staff checkbox. Same thing with authors. If you click on authors, you'll see only the authors or only the hosts. And these people are organized alphabetically by first name. You'll be able to click on any of them and get to their people page. You notice that it's going to give you their photo, their name, their title, and then if there is a bio, it'll give you a little teaser of the bio. And if they're affiliated with a specific program, which we're going to talk about in 1 second, the link to their program page will show up. And so just again, that is /people is where you would go to see a list of all the people pages on your site. All right, so going back to our Module 2 recap. In this module, we created a people page, a few workflow notes. Again, you want to create people pages for all of your local staff and content contributors, but you do not have to create people pages for syndicated staff. Remember, if those users, if any of the people that you want to delete have created posts, you cannot delete them, but you can unpublish them to remove them from your /people page. And we do recommend using consistent photo sizes and orientation for your people pages. We have one other question that came up. The question is, if you do not include any ways to connect, will that bar go away or will it show up blank? Good question. If you do not add any ways to connect, you're just not going to have that little text to the far right. It's just going to be blank there. It won't say like ways to connect with no info. It'll just not show up at all. We have another question. Can you include a link to the website's contact us page instead in the ways to connect? Oh, I'm in the ways to connect section. So you can add a link to the contact us page in the ways to connect section. That could be one of the links. It could say contact us, and then the link could be to the contact page. You could absolutely do that, yes. All right. So that was module 2. Again, we talked about people pages. We're going to talk about our next piece of content here in module 3, and that is the program page. So program pages, think of them as landing pages for each of your local and syndicated programs. They display information like the airtime, program description, hosts, contact info, so any email addresses, social media, playlists for your music programs, and also associated posts where applicable. The 2 items with stars next to them, your airtimes and your playlist, that information is pulled directly from Composer 2. So you want to make sure before you start to work on your program pages that you have already set up Composer 2 if you need to do that, or that you've confirmed that your Composer 2 schedule is up to date, that all of the programs in your grid are correct, they are up to date, and they are at the correct airtime, because Composer 2 is going to look to that. Core Publisher is going to look to Composer 2 to pull in some of that data. And you're going to be responsible for creating your program pages for every local and syndicated program. There's a few things you're going to want to grab before you do so. The first is a basic program description, the days and times that your program airs, the names of all of your hosts, and your program logo. So again, in terms of the order of the homework assignments that you're doing, you want to make your users, then you want to create your people pages, and you want to make sure those 2 things are complete before you start to work on your program pages, because Core Publisher is going to look for people pages for the hosts of your programs. They are tied together. In terms of your program descriptions and logos, in the email that I sent out on Monday, there was a link to a Dropbox folder that contained just program descriptions and logos for some of the most commonly used syndicated NPR programs. I do recommend taking a look at that just to make some of your homework a bit easier this week. And a program is a piece of content, so you will be going to add content and selecting program to create one. So let's take a look at a live program page before we move on to our second exercise. So what we're looking at here, we are on WRTI.org. This is the program page for their classical new releases program. So you see you have the title, when the program airs, and the host, and this link actually links back to Mark's People page. You've got an image and some program description. They chose to use a photo of the host for their program page. And then you have the Composer 2 widget that allows users to search this playlist for this section of playlists for specific songs from this program. And then when I scroll even further down, it looks like their hosts and the folks affiliated with this program have been creating posts as well. So if you have a music program that doesn't have posts, you're going to just see the Composer 2 widget. But if you have a program that has both music and news posts, you're going to see the playlist and then the posts. For anyone that's creating news programs that will not have playlists at all, then this just won't show up. You won't have the playlist widget. You'll only have the post river. And then just as one more thing, you'll note that your underwriting spots will show up on your program pages as well. So that is an example of a program page. All right, so you want to make sure now that you are logged into your site. We're going to go back to create, we have another exercise. We're going to create a program page. One of the things you're going to be creating this week are program pages for your local and syndicated programs. So we're going to create a test program now. And we're going to call our program The Play, and it's going to air weekdays from noon till 2 p.m. So let's everyone go into our site. Another thing that you're going to want to do before you go into your site is you're going to want to go back into that resources folder that we all put onto our desktop. And there is a text file called text for program page. You just want to open that up and grab that text and copy it because we're going to be using that for our program page. All right. So I'm still on my people page from the last exercise. I'm going to click on add content again. And this time we're creating a program. So when you click on find program from list below, mine is going to be empty. I'm not connected to a Composer 2 account, but yours will have all of the programs listed that you have created in Composer 2. So for this example, we're creating a program that doesn't exist in Composer 2. That's okay. When you get ready to create your programs that exist in Composer 2, you're going to click on the name of that program from this list to select it to pull in some of the information from Composer 2 into Core Publisher. It's really important to make sure that you do that so that any of your playlist information is pulled over as well. But for this example, we're creating a program that does not exist in Composer 2, and we're going to call it The Play. It is a radio program, so we're going to make sure that the medium is radio. And this is an entertainment program, so we're going to click on entertainment. In terms of when does it air, this is a human readable field. So this is more about how do you refer to your airtime at your station. So I'm going to say that my program airs weekdays from noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Time. But I could also say Monday through Friday or Monday through Friday from noon to 2 p.m. It really depends on how you refer to your airtime and what works best with how you communicate that to your stations. We're then going to put in our description, our plain text description. You can also, again, add bold, italics, any sorts of formatting to this description. And then we have that ways to connect field again. So if I wanted to put in an email address for my show, I could say email our hosts. And then remember always the pipe. And then the play at WTST. I'm sorry. Oh, I almost forgot and made the mistake myself. It's always mail to colon and then the email address. All right. Um, let's see. We have some questions. So the questions are about, so it looks like folks are not seeing their Composer 2 information. I will make sure to take a look at that as soon as we get off of this call. It looks like there are a few folks who are not seeing the Composer 2 information. Sorry about that. Good thing is that we don't need it for this exercise, but I will make sure that it is ready for you so that when you're ready to create your real program pages, it will exist. So that's our ways to connect section. If I wanted to add a Twitter account for my program, Twitter, always the pipe, and then the full email address. All right. And now we're going to enter our host name. So the name of our host is going to be the people page that we just created, and that's going to be for April O'Neil. As I start to type it in the host name field, you'll notice that it as auto completing. So we're going to all click on April O'Neil and we're going to see this NID. When you see the NID, that's letting you know that it's actually connecting to another piece of content that's in Core Publisher. So we know that this is linking directly to our people page. If we needed to link to a host that maybe didn't have a people page, perhaps a syndicated person, like what you would do for Morning Edition, where you have your local host who would have a people page, but then you also have your host that doesn't. You could type in Steve Inskeep here. And that's going to just not link to a people page, but it will show up on the program page. Under Program Assets, this is where we're going to put our logo for our program. So we're going to upload that from our Dropbox folder, and it's called Image for Program Page. So I'm going to hit Submit to upload that. I'm going to give it one more try. There we go. And then we have this external podcast URL field. So there are two ways to deal with external podcasts. If, for example, you have a program that you've always aired and right now you have a SoundCloud or maybe some other sort of podcast URL for the archive of that show, I do recommend putting that into the ways to connect section. So listen to our archive, and then, maybe you have a SoundCloud URL. You would put that up there. If you are, for example, creating a program page for a program like the Diane Rehm Show, for example, that does not ingest their content to the NPR Story API, but they do have a podcast, you could put it here and it'll pull information from that podcast onto your program page. It's something that your web visitors will be clicking on to go off site to experience that media. But if you did want to share that, you can put it in the external podcast URL field. You'll then have this database information. You want to leave all of this as the way it is. This is just going to allow this program page to talk to the NPR Story API and Composer 2. For right now, it's blank, but for the programs that you will be selecting from the Composer 2 list, you will see information here. All right, and then the last thing that we're going to do is we are going to once we have everything set up, we're going to hit Save Program to save our new program. We see we've got our ways to connect. We have all of our information on our new program page. All right. Let's see if we have any questions that came in. Looks like no other questions. All right. Just like with your people pages, you're always going to click on that edit tab to make any edits to your program pages. You're also going to notice a podcast and RSS tab. We're going to talk about that one next week. So that's a recap of, so this was module 3 actually. We created a program page. Remember that you're going to be creating program pages for all of the programs that you air at your station, both local and syndicated. You can also create program pages for any of your specials. So if you have like a 2 week long program that you air around the Christmas holiday, or if you have something that you air around the elections, you can create a program page for that as well. You do want to make sure that your Composer 2 schedule is up to date before starting to create any programs. And we do recommend creating your people pages first before you start work on your program pages. All right. So we had one other question that came in about people pages that I wanted to answer before we moved on to our 4th module. And the question was, is there a way to not have all of the headings on the people page? Good question. So, if you don't, for example, want to have, and I'm going to actually um, go into one of our sites so we can take a look at exactly what we're talking about. So if you, for example, don't want to have authors or interns or staff, for example, on your people page, then just don't check any of those check boxes. The only tabs that you're going to see up here are the ones that you have created people pages and assigned those capacities to that person. So when you are on your people page, you're going to remember that you're going to have those capacities. So let's scroll down a bit. So where you have these capacities here, if you just don't check authors or board of directors or community advisory groups, like if you only, for example, use hosts or authors, for example, or staff, then you're only going to see all syndicated and staff. But if you choose to start to check these, then that's what's going to control them showing up on the /people page. All right. So let's hop back into our slides. Oh, we have another question that just came in. I'm going to hold off on this other question until we get through our other modules. I will definitely go back and address it before we end our training today. Okay, so looking at module 4. So now we're going to move from talking about content types, and we're going to start to talk about how to organize your content in your navigation. So far you've created pages, and this week you'll be creating your people and your programs, and it's time to make sure that we have those links accessible for your web visitors to get to them so they can see all the hard work that you're doing creating this content. So in this module, we're going to talk about your navigation, which is built through the Flexi menu. So I do recommend taking a look at other sites in our core publisher universe to get some inspiration for your Flexi menu. I have 2 examples here. The first is Aspen Public Radio. I like to show these guys because I really think it's interesting how their navigation is really focused on the web visitor. So you have on the air and then your news, your music, and your station to really put the focus back on the ownership that the web visitor has of the station and of their brand. And then they have support, events, connect, and search. For Utah Public Radio, this is UPR. I like to bring these guys up because you'll notice that they have some of the more standard links, news, programs, about, support, connect, and they also have this Utah Climate Center. So that was something that they identified as being a real draw for their site, something that folks were coming to their site for. And so they made it a top level option in their navigation to make it easy for their web visitors to get to it. So when you're creating your navigation, you don't want to think about how your station is organized. You want to really focus on how to make it easy for your web visitors to get to the things that you want them to see. Another thing to note is the search link. I'm going to be adding a search link to your navigation on the day of your launch. So make sure that you keep in mind that no matter how long your navigation is, there's always going to be one extra link that I'm going to be adding on your launch day. So in terms of some things to add to your navigation, of course, you want to have a home link that goes back to your home page. programming and schedule information, news and music focused items, support and pledge. Of course, you want to make sure you've got your support and pledge. Even if you have it up here in your header, definitely recommend still adding it to your navigation. About, station info, contact us, social media, special topics, things that folks really come to your station to get information about. And then, of course, again, that search link. And your Flexi menu is a queue, a table queue. And we talked about these a little bit last week when we talked about your partner logo footer. Your Flexi menu is another queue. You can always go to manage queues to get to the link of those, but you can also, under edit queues to the far left side of your content screen, you can get to the Flexi menu admin there as well. And that brings us to our exercise for this module. We're going to create a few links in your Flexi menu right now. Of course, you're going to go in, there are going to be links that you're going to be creating. We're going to add a few based on some pages that currently exist on your site. So if you check in your Dropbox folder after this call, you will notice that there is a PDF in there with a list of some of the pages that already exist on your site. Schedule, news, NPR news, programs. So let's add a few of those to our navigation now. So let's go back to our sites. And I'm just going to click on content for right now. And I notice on my content page, I have this edit cues block to the far left at the bottom. I'm going to click on Flexi menu. And our Flexi menus are blank if we have not been adding content. And you'll notice that number of rows is 0. For right now, I'm just going to add 5 and hit rebuild. Let's just start with 5 rows. You notice you have 4 columns here. The first is title. This is where you're going to type in the text that's going to display in the navigation. Then you have URL. That's where you're going to put the URL of the page that you're linking to. And then you have display and new window. So we've already talked about how there is a /people page that will give you a link to all of your staff. So let's type in staff in the top in the title field. And then in the URL field, I'm going to put /people. If you're ever linking to a page on Core Publisher, you don't want to pull in the full URL. You just want to use the relative URL, which is everything after yourstation.drupal.publicbroadcasting.net or yourstation.org. You want everything after that, which would be /people. I'm going to click on display because I want this to display in my navigation, but I'm not going to check new window because this link goes to Core Publisher. I don't need it to open in a new window. We also have programs, and the URL for that is just /programs. So it's the same thing. And again, there's a list of all of these URLs in your Dropbox folder. I'm also going to have one called About Us. And let's just say, for example, that I hypothetically have a page. The URL is wtst.drupal.publicbroadcasting.net/about-us. So I'm just going to put about-us and hit display. But under that, I want to have a drop down that's contact. I'm going to make up a URL of contact. To create the drop down so that about us is the top level and contact is under it, I'm going to just click on this crossed arrows and I'm going to just nudge it to the right. That's going to create the drop down. And the last thing I'm going to do is I want to link to npr.org homepage. And the URL for that, I'm going to pull in the full URL because I'm linking off of my Core Publisher site. And I'm also going to check the new window checkbox. And the last thing that I want to do is I've decided I want programs to be first. So let's click on the arrow and drag it up above staff so that programs will show up to the far left and staff will be after that. So again, we're going to click on the crossed arrows, drag our row to where we want it to be, to what order we want things to be in. And then we're going to hit Save Queue to save our navigation. So when we go back to our home page now, I see that we should all see that we have our new Flexi menu and we have our drop down. All right. So that's your navigation. And again, you're going to be adding links to the pages that you already created, but also take a look at that PDF in the Dropbox folder for some other URLs that you may want to add. So a few workflow notes from this module. The first is that remember in the URL field, enter the full URL of the page that you're linking to unless you are linking to a page on Core Publisher, and then you're going to use the relative link. So just everything after the your website URL part, the wtst.org or .drupal.publicbroadcasting.net. Always use the crossed arrows icon to drag and drop your links into the preferred order. And you could also drag it, to the right, not the left, to the right to create a drop down. And if you're linking to pages outside of your site, check the new window checkbox. All right. I've got some numbering issues going on with these slides. Sorry about that. This is actually module 5, our final module of the day. We're going to talk about the auxiliary links footer. So last week we introduced the footer. You see there's 2 levels to that. You've got partner footer at the top, auxiliary links footer at the bottom. Last week we talked about the partner footer. This week we're going to talk about auxiliary links. And there are tons of different ways that you can do your auxiliary links footer. Some stations choose to put their social media down there, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. You can put those things in the footer. Other stations choose to put things like support us, terms of use, privacy policy, events, EEO, contact us, audits, and then home links. It's really up to you and your station team to decide how you want to use the footer. But just think when you're thinking about what to put down there, think about the sorts of links that you look for when you go to other websites. The footer is a great place to put the sorts of things that someone's coming to your site. They don't want to dig through your navigation. They just want to get information. They just want to figure out how to contact you. They just want to get to your Twitter page. They just want to see what jobs you have available. Those are the sorts of things you want to think about when you're coming up with links for that footer. And the auxiliary links footer, just like the Flexi menu, is a table queue. And so for this exercise, we are going to add 2 links to your auxiliary links footer. We're going to do that together. So let's all go to our sites. Let's all go into our site and we're going to create some links for our auxiliary links footer. Make sure I'm sharing my screen. So I'm still back on my home page. I'm going to go to Configure Core Publisher this time. And I see that I have auxiliary links footer. It's the last link under Edit Queues. And right now I only have 1 row, but for this example, I need 2 for our exercise. So let's all under number of rows put in the number 2 and hit rebuild. And you see I have 3 columns here. Very similar to the Flexi menu, right? In terms of what you have. You have text, URL, and new window. For the first one, we're going to put support in the text link, and we're going to add a link to our support page. Let's just say that it's offsite. It's a pledge form, so it's support mystation.org/my call letters. And this is just pretend, of course. You will go back in and update this for whatever you want it to say. This is just for our exercise. In the second field, we're going to put a link to our privacy policy page. It's really important to have a privacy policy page on your site if you don't have one, just to give your web visitors assurance of how you will be using any information that they give via a pledge form or any other sort of form that they have on your site. And for this one, because this page actually exists on my core publisher site, I'm going to again just use the relative URL. And because it is a page on my site, I am not going to check the new window checkbox. I'm going to leave that unchecked. If I decide that I want privacy policy to actually be first, click on the crossed icon, this crossed arrow icon, and just drag it up to the top. The one at the link at the very top is what's going to show to the far left. I'm going to hit Save Queue. And when I go back to my home page, I'll see that I have my auxiliary links footer. All right. Let's go back into our slides for our module recap. So that was the auxiliary links footer, very similar to the Flexi menu and how you add links to it. In terms of workflow notes, you're going to remember that the auxiliary links footer is just the bottom half of your current footer. A link to a folder containing commonly used, this is partner logos, but it's actually some of those commonly used links, some of those other pre-created links is in your email Dropbox folder. And then also, if you make sure that you use the new window checkbox for any of those links that go off-site. All right, so your next steps and homework for this week first are to start to work on your program pages, your people pages. So get your assets together and start to create them for any contributors and staff. If you want to have your team actually build out their own bios and write them up and give them to you, that's totally fine. It's a great way to help your team start to get excited about the new site is to ask them to provide their own bios. And if you need to take photos, recommend doing that as well. Start to work on your people pages. Remember that you program pages. I'm sorry, so many words that begin with P this week. Your program pages. Remember that there is a link to a Dropbox folder that has some information to help out in terms of logos and descriptions for syndicated content. And then also, you want to create a list of podcast URLs for these programs that will need to be updated once your site goes live. So if you have podcasts out in the wild for any of these programs, you'll want to just jot them down in an email or a Google Doc. We'll need that information for a future week. Start to work on your Flexi menu and your auxiliary links footers, and also to continue to work on your header programs and pages. So a recap for this week, we talked about adding content, managing your people and program pages, building your navigation with the Flexi menu, and managing the auxiliary links footer. We had one question that came in that I wanted to answer. The question is, can we delete all of the syndicated people who have showed up on our people pages? And the answer to that question is no. You cannot delete those syndicated people pages. They are actually tied to posts that were pulled into your site. So I turned on the NPR story, your API keys that you gave me. I turned them on your site to test them. And as a part of that, it pulled in some posts. If you choose that you don't really want those posts to show up because you're not going to be doing a lot around news, we can talk about removing that content and then removing those people pages. We can talk about that on our one-on-one calls. But if you are going to continue to pull in any sort of content from the API, any sort of posts, whether they're music posts, news posts, arts related posts, anything like that, it is going to pull in syndicated people, and they will have to stay on your site in order for the connection between those posts and the API to exist. All right. Any other questions or things folks want us to go over in the last 6 minutes of our call? All right, looks like if we don't have any other questions, then you guys are all set. Again, remember, take a look in your Dropbox folder for some resources for those different pages, and also for information for those program pages. And I'll talk to you all on your check-in calls later this week. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.